think you have to appreciate that, well, let's take Australia first rather than the broad APAC, because that's a much bigger question. APAC is different to the rest of the world. Australia is different to the rest of APAC, and APAC is made up of a whole bunch of very different markets. So the notion that you can take something that works really well in Europe or in the US and put that model straight into either Australia or any other APAC country for that matter is fundamentally flawed. And that means that you need to prepare yourself for doing business slightly differently, certainly for messaging your marketing activities differently. Throwing out an EDM, for example, that you've used successfully in the US or in the UK, and thinking that will work here is also flawed. And another reason for that, let's take Australia, is that if we're talking about digital commerce, for example, the Australian marketplace in general is not at the same place that the US or UK one is. And so you've got to think that you may need to use some messaging that was used some time ago in the UK or US to start off with, but you still have to rejig that messaging to make it feel local. And therein lies one of your first big problems, in that you won't have a local example. Where's my local references? Everybody in Australia will say, yeah, tell me a local example, and you won't have one. So whatever you need to do to get a couple at least of local examples, do it. Give your stuff away, but make sure you execute really well, and have it very clear in that cheap contract that you are going to need press and you are going to need case study and reference material, because you will need local case studies as quickly as you possibly can. So that's fundamental. And then Australia confidence comes from many different people talking about your stuff at the same time. So it's not good enough for you as a vendor to be saying how great you are, or for one other person or partner to be saying the same thing. You need an ecosystem of partners, partner companies, whether they're formal or informal partners, but other companies in the similar space to you, not competitive obviously, but in the same space, who are talking about the benefits at a very high level of your software. Those partners are essential, and if you want to get partners on board quickly, the best thing you can do is to give something to them first. Make sure you're passing on partner details to people when you're having conversations, because you will need that partner network, that partner ecosystem to be working in your favour. And as a new entrant, certainly I found that you probably want to be spending 30% of your time actively working those partners who are going to give you warm introductions, who are going to mention you in business conversations that they're having. And that's activity that isn't going to generate you any obvious revenue straight away. But it's time that you must spend.
Hey, they're great insights around the first stage. Can you walk me through the key milestones, second stage, third stage, what to consider, what potentially some of the risk points are, if someone was to launch into APAC?
There's a tipping point you reach when you've got some sales and account management people in, and you're doing a bit of your marketing and your business relationship development. But there's a tipping point when you really need support and technical people here. But it's not necessarily justified to put a full technical services team in the Australian office before you get to a certain revenue stream. And the revenue is obviously much less here than it would be in other countries. It's a smaller market. So early on, if you can think about the Australian marketplace, or the Australian office rather, as a strategic geographical location for you because of the time zone it's in, as a place that provides if you stick technical people and support people in Australia, and you're a company that's based in the US or Europe, you automatically have 24-hour follow the sun support, because those people are awake when you're asleep in the UK or US, and can provide during their normal workday support for your clients in the middle of their night or their evening. If we're talking about digital commerce, all of the major websites light up between 6 and 11 p.m. at night, which is right after your support people typically go home, but exactly when the Australian workday starts. That means that Australian office can provide you global 24-hour support, be part of the global 24-hour support network. And if you think of it like that, then you can justify additional resource to work on behalf of the broader company, rather than just to service one business you might have in Australia at that time, which might not be enough to justify the full team. Taken in the broader picture, it certainly is. And having those people on the ground and building that office that way obviously snowballs.
We get a lot of organisations talk to us around their market entry and whether that should be an aggressive launch, a soft launch, potentially going through partners. What are your thoughts when you think back to your time at Bizarre Voice, and what kind of recommendations would you make?
If you're going to be aggressive, you have to have something to talk about. And I said at the beginning, it's not enough for you to talk about your product only. You need to have a story about what value and difference that's going to bring to the Australian market, Australian consumer, or Australian business. And really you need a couple of local examples to be able to do that. So I think definitely a soft launch first, because when you go aggressive with a bit more of a bang, you need to have those partner companies already there supporting you. You need to have local reference, and then you can essentially relaunch once you get to that point, but that's not going to be initially. So it has to be soft launch first, and then you have to build some solid foundations before you then go, right, bang, we're ready to go. I wouldn't be going with a hard, and at the risk of angering our US friends who might be listening, you don't get to go with a big US razzmatazz to kick off with. That just won't work. I'll tell you quite clearly that for me, when it came to phase 3, in the last 2 companies that I've been in, and that's not me, I'm not saying a bad word about them, but the last 2 companies I've worked with, when we came ready for stage 3, we didn't have anybody on a bench or in a talent pool to go to, and so it took a long time to get the right people in. We just didn't start quickly enough, and partly that was a not getting resources signed off thing, but I don't think we did a great job of that, and that does leave you exposed. You've done all the hard yards, and then you want to execute on some more people to knock over all the goals that you've got sitting teed up for you, and you just can't get around everybody in time, because you haven't built that bench and that talent pool. It's probably the thing that I would advise. Certainly I would try and do differently, but you're never going to get sign off from head office for additional salespeople ahead of the time when you start getting significant revenues in. It's difficult. It is a chicken and egg, but you'll say, hey, I've got a bunch of deals that are coming in. We've got 10 new clients this quarter coming in. We're going to need to be able to, we're building up the pool, and the database looks really healthy, and the pipeline and funnel looks great, and then you try and push the buttons for new people, and it just takes you a while to get the right people on board, and it does take a while, so you kind of have to start just before you're ready, or a little bit before you're ready, and that's what I would encourage to be done differently next time.